Every who down in Who Newville liked the holidays a ton. But where to get great prices on gifts, they had no idea. None. They searched and they searched for great gifts under $25. Gifts for spouses and friends and even their toddlers. When suddenly one who shouted, Walmart has what you want, knowing they have Lego, Tree Hut, and no prices to flaunt. So they enjoy the holiday season as who's often do. Cheering and shouting, Walmart has incredible gifts. Who knew? Find gifts they'll love under $25 at Walmart.
No one should have to choose between their own safety and their pets. But nearly half of domestic abuse survivors delay leaving because they can't bring their pets with them. Purina is helping to create more pet-friendly domestic violence shelters through the Purple Leash Project, so survivors and their pets can escape and heal together. Visit Purina.com/purple to learn more.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. Thanks so much for joining on Thanksgiving weekend. One of the guys who is bountiful in terms of his knowledge of the economy and somebody who has really been quite an aspirational figure for me is the great Steve Forbes. I mean, I can't think of anybody better to talk to on this. I want to just tell you that Steve Forbes is someone who has been my mentor, actually, with along with Art Laffer, and he is. I always say that there's not any very few presidential candidacies that have had so much impact on public policy as Steve Forbes when he ran for president in, I believe it was 1996 and 2000. And Steve Forbes put all these ideas out there, like medical savings accounts and like term limits for politicians and like personal accounts for Social Security. And of course, maybe the most important one of all was the idea of a flat tax. And regular listeners to this station know that I feel passionately about making the tax system simpler, more pro-growth, fairer, and more understandable. And the way to do that, folks, is to have a flat tax with a postcard tax return that everybody understands, does not put America at disadvantage. It puts our companies on a level playing field with other countries so we can create more jobs here. My first guest is Steve Forbes, the great economist, the man who ran for president and changed America with his ideas on everything from Social Security personal accounts to medical savings accounts to term limits to all of these amazing, of course, the flat tax. So Steve Forbes, thanks for joining this afternoon.
Good to be with you. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving and ate all the things you shouldn't have eaten.
Too much of it, Steve, too much. So thank you for joining. So my first question is about the issue of affordability. This is kind of a new word in the lexicon of economics. And people are complaining about the cost of things. I get that, although when I graduated from college, Steve, back in the early 80s, I remember we had 11% inflation. Right now we have inflation about 3%, but people are angry. Why?
Well, they're angry because the word affordability is another word for inflation, for a higher cost of living. And that's got people upset. The cost of health care is going up. Yeah. A lot of items at the grocery store are going up. College education is going up. People wondering whether it's worth the cost. So people are not in a good mood. The Democrats are trying to pretend that Trump in 10 months, when especially in terms of regulation, what the Obama years did.
Right. All of those things dramatically increase prices. I think the most obvious one, Steve Forbes, is what has happened with healthcare costs, which have exploded. You know, I've seen numbers that since we passed the quote Affordable Care Act, that in most areas healthcare costs have doubled and even some cases tripled.
It has. And that's why we need the Republicans have to stop avoiding this issue and come up with, I think, free market fixes for it. For example, health savings accounts. Yes. The barriers should be removed on that.
By the way, Steve, you started talking about that, 25 years ago or 30 years ago, yes. And it's an idea whose time has come.
It has come. We have a variation of it now, but there's still too many restrictions on it,
Right.
including telemedicine, mental health.
Can you explain to people, Steve, what is it? A lot of people don't even know what a health savings account is. How does it work?
Well, now is that the employer provides it for most people, and you can make contributions, or the employer can make contributions tax-free, and it gives you control of the money to spend as you see fit. The problem is that you're fixed in terms of the health care plan that the employer offers, and so those kind of restrictions should be removed. So HSA should be fully portable. You should be able to use it for services easily outside of networks and the like. In other words, trying to do with healthcare with education savings accounts are starting to use in parental control of education, where the parents, and in this case the patients, control the money, not the employer. And what we should have is the employer simply offering a variety of plans like they do for retirement, and you make the choice. As you know, because you've seen it yourself, in the federal government, they have literally scores of different health care plans that you can choose from. Why not do that nationwide? And so in terms of that would be a good thing.
By the way, on health savings
for catastrophic, real catastrophic insurance, just one little thing on that. A typical family plan now costs $27,000 a year. If you went to family, and said for $7,000 or $8,000, you can have a plan where above a $7,000 or $8,000 level, everything is covered 100%.
Yes,
and you get to keep the $20,000. How many do you think would go for the old?
I'm raising my hand.
Pocketing the $20,000. You know what most people would do, and you start to have a real free market in healthcare.
What a concept. I mean, isn't it interesting, Steve? It's something you and I have talked about over the years. And by the way, I should have mentioned that Steve Forbes is also the co-founder of Unleash Prosperity with Larry Kudlow and myself and Art Laffer. And of course, Larry Kudlow abandoned us to work for the president. Jeez whiz. And then his priorities straight there. But so thank you for all this work you've done for Unleash Prosperity. But isn't it interesting, Steve? It's a point I've made so many times over the years on this show, that the two areas where we've runaway costs are healthcare and education. And those, who runs those industries?
You bet. When the government's involved, you pay more and get less. Right. You have inferior products and services, inferior choices, and then they blame free markets and demand more government control.
So, Steve, we have to take a quick break. Can I hold you over for one more segment? Because I would like to ask you about why we can't move towards personal accounts for Social Security, because we now have Dow at 47,000, and imagine if young people had invested their Social Security money in that. Could I hold you over for one more?
Sure.
Okay, we'll be right back. That's Steve Forbes. This is the More Money Show. Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. We have just a few minutes left with my hero, Steve Forbes. So let's get right into it. So, Steve, you are the expert on monetary policy, along with my good friend Judy Shelton, and I'm a big fan of Kevin Hassett and some of the others that are being considered for the next Fed chairmanship. What should the Fed, if you were the Fed chairman, and I would love to see you be the Fed chairman, what are some of the first things that you would do? Because we've had this herky-jerky monetary policy with the dollar up and down, inflation up and down. It's hard to run an economy when you don't know what things cost.
Well, that's right. They forget, and it's true of most central bankers, they forget that money measures value, like a scale measures weight or a clock measures time. And when you have an unstable dollar, you get a subpar economy, and you get troubles like inflation. So the first thing a Fed head should do is announce that henceforth they're abandoning the false idea that prosperity causes inflation, and instead they're going to focus on a stable value for the dollar and not try to manipulate the economy. They should also announce that they're no longer going to set interest rates. That's a form of rent control. Rent control is about renting an apartment. In monetary policy, it's about the cost of renting money. And the Fed's controlling that has really distorted the markets. So let the markets work. Stable dollar, free markets, and you would see a much, much healthier financial market. And I think you'd see a much healthier economy when people could learn to trust the dollar again. And by the way, a trustworthy dollar would stop all this jabber about the BRICS, these countries that want an alternative to the dollar. That would be stopped in its tracks because people would go to Uncle Sam versus Beijing.
So the stable dollar idea is a great point. I mean, that's what you want from your monetary policy. It's why you have a currency, right? To be to hold its value. And so the question, of course, is how do you create the stable dollar? I've always been in favor of some kind of price rule, like follow what's happening with commodities, or I know you've been a strong fan of making the dollar, adjusting it relative to the price of gold. So if you keep the price of gold stable, you're going to have a stable dollar, right? Yes,
gold, there's a ton of misunderstanding about gold. In this case, it's simply like a measuring stick, a yardstick.
Right.
And it's not perfect, but it's worked better for 4,000 years than anything else. So it's very basic. If the gold price is going up, it's not so much the value of gold going up, but the dollar going down.
Right.
So if it starts to go up, you stop printing too much money. If it's going down, you start printing more money. In essence, that's it. And when people realize that you're serious about it, that you're listening to the market, you'll see a huge change. So right now, there's no way we could have a formal gold standard. One, they wouldn't know how to run it. But we could do what Greenspan did for a few years back in the 1990s, when he openly said he looked at the gold price and some commodity prices, determine monetary policy. And then he unfortunately abandoned that in the early 2000s. It led to the disaster of 2007 and 8 and 9. But let the market be your guide.
So, Steve, there's one big problem with what you're proposing. Do you know what that is?
It means less power for certain people.
Exactly.
But you think about it. Everyone accepts.
What are those 300 PhD economists over at the Fed? What are they going to do?
Well, they'd make excellent Uber drivers. Do something useful, and just think of it for a moment, Steve.
Yeah,
how preposterous it is. How everyone accepts the idea that it's okay for the Fed to try to stimulate or depress the economy, depending on its vision on inflation. It's ideas where inflation is going. That's the Soviet Union. Why should they be trying to manipulate the economy? It's preposterous, and it's done us immense harm over the years, and that's one of the reasons why we have an affordability crisis.
Yeah. So part of it, of course, is of course the problem we have with money, and the Fed has done. Like, by the way, what grade would you give Jerome Powell as the Fed chairman? I would probably give him charitably a C- or D, but what grade would you give him?
Yeah, today you're not allowed to give anyone below an A-.
That's right. Yeah, that's called grade inflation, right?
Yeah, well, it's infected everything, including grades mean, sadly, less and less. But I'd give him a D-.
Me too. And
I'd flunk him. I'd give him a mild flunk. He seems like a nice guy. Would make a great dinner partner at a dinner party, and. So I'd give him an F+, not a straight F.
F+. So do you have a favorite for the Fed chairmanship? I'm a big fan of Kevin Warsh. I think Kevin Hassett would do a good job. I think Judy Shelton would do a good job. I think a regular on this show, David Malpass, would be a good job. And by the way, another person I think would do a great job is Steve Forbes.
Well, I'm an agitator now, so but you mentioned some good names. Judy, she should be on the board already. She was sabotaged by then Senator Mitt Romney.
Yep.
And David Malpass, he knows the Fed inside out. If he doesn't become head of the Fed, chairman of the Fed, what they should do is make him head of the New York Fed, which is the most important of the Federal Reserve regional banks. He'd be excellent there. But he would make an excellent Fed head because he understands things, and there's no way they could buffalo him. I wouldn't rule out yet the possibility of Scott Bessent ending up on the Fed. I think he's the kind of person who could quickly learn what the mistakes of the Fed have been and do things that conventional economists would not think of doing, like going for what Greenspan did for a while in the mid-1990s. And I think he has the authority, success in the private sector, now knows all too well government, and would not be pushed around by the Fed. That's what happened to poor Powell, is he just got enveloped like spiders in like a fly in the web.
So when we were talking, you mentioned earlier, and I mentioned earlier, this idea of some kind of price rule, et cetera. And if you look back at the record of Paul Volcker, who was the chairman of the Federal Reserve Board in the I think late 70s through the mid 80s, he really used prices of commodities and gold as his indicator of where we should be on. And
yeah, he did, and so we've had some periods where we had what you might call a half-baked or sloppy gold standard, but it was far better than the mess we see today, where the Fed still thinks that, wages are going up too much, we must depress the economy, and that kind of nonsense. And, whenever the economy does well, the Fed always says, we have to worry about overheating. I just ask your listeners to ask themselves a basic question. If they start to do well, their incomes are going up, do they start sweating at night? They start feeling they're overheating because they're earning more money. Right. It's just preposterous.
So, Steve, when I first came to Washington 40 years ago, we had a Dow of 1,000. Now we have a Dow of 47,000, which is incredible. 4,700% increase in the value of equities. What a shame it is we didn't do what you suggested starting in the 1980s and then in the 90s, allowing young workers to put their payroll tax money into an account like a 401k and become owners of companies.
That's right. You get some good index with low cost, which they're now pennies now, and you'll do. You've seen the studies 3 to 5 times more in retirement than you get now. And even if you just go for CDs, or you'll get double what you get now. And the thing is, as you just touched on, you own it. You decide your retirement age, not the Washington politicians. And if there's money left in your account when you leave this world, you can leave it to your kids, your family, whatever, but it's your property. And can you imagine, just a quick thing before we go, a young person starts to work part-time job, and they start getting these, and they start learning what capital is, and knowing that these accounts are not a gift to politicians, what that does to their mindset. Positive. It's almost too logical. I mean, it's the ultimate free lunch. Everybody is better off. And by the way, we have run some of these numbers, Steve. If we had done what you suggested, 35 or so years ago, we'd have pension millionaires. And we would have everybody own a piece of the rock, and we wouldn't have wealth inequality because everybody would be rich. Yes, and that's the thing about Americans. They're not envious. They just want to know that they're having a chance to move ahead, and they don't worry if Bill Gates is doing well or not. So, Steve, could you run for president again? And in 2000, what's the next election? We have 28, and run on this idea, because it is so important for my kids. It's too late for me. It's too late for you, but it's not too late for our kids and grandkids. That's right. And so I'm an agitator now. And so the two of us are going to have to continue working together to educate these would-be presidents and Fed heads and the like. Thank you, Steve Forbes. Appreciate your taking some time on this Thanksgiving weekend, and have a great rest of your weekend. And folks, this is the More Money Show. We'll be right back.
Thanks for listening to More Money with Steve Moore. You can hear More Money with Steve Moore Saturday afternoons at 1. If you like the podcast, Share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?